I'm Rob Lubow, CMO of Botcopy. We're supposed to be joined by Gunnar Crispen. He couldn't make it. I'm going to do the best I can to fill in for him and tell his story a little bit. There's so much to go over. We know that the Title II compliance regulations, the deadline is coming 2027 for larger organizations. So we're going to talk all about that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me here. I'm thrilled to be here to talk about accessibility and Agentic CX today. You're hearing the voice of Ruben, who is our ASL interpreter. I'm a sign language user. Ruben has worked with me for 7 or 8 years now. He's been a designated interpreter for me, meaning that he is familiar with all of my work, the context and all. So he also understands my attempt at humor. So if I ever have any, he can try to get it across. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a principal UX designer here at IDMe. I have worked in design for over 20 years now. I am also the accessibility lead for the company at IDMe all up. Really, accessibility is the foundation of what we do as designers. When I'm designing something, I have to make sure that I'm designing for everyone and make sure that I'm considering everyone's different needs. So accessibility has just been a part of my career journey from the beginning. Before I was at IDMe, I helped to set up the accessibility program at Prime Video at Amazon. And then I brought that over to IDMe to continue IDMe's journey for accessibility. If you're unfamiliar with IDMe, IDMe is the next generation digital wallet that simplifies how you prove who you are online. With the IDMe wallet, you verify your identity one time to create a secure, portable digital credential that you can store and then reuse everywhere. From accessing federal and state government services like the IRS, the VA, Social Security, to unlocking discounts at top retailers. Trusted by over 170 million members, IDMe Wallet powers a digital identity network designed to work for everyone. And that really comes down to accessibility. Our commitment to accessibility at IDMe, accessibility is a real core value that advances our purpose of no identity left behind. We design solutions to expand access for everyone, including people that are underserved by legacy systems. For those who encounter barriers with automated verification, we also offer dedicated video chat support to help ensure equitable access for all. We are setting up an accessibility program that's run by myself and really scaling it throughout the company. We are working to improve the culture inside the company to make sure that everybody knows it's everybody's responsibility to consider all of our users. I'm excited to be here to be able to contribute to the conversation. Thanks, Rob. I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor. Since Gunnar was supposed to be here, I'm play a very short excerpt from our recent podcast.
A memory that I vividly recall, we were doing some sort of like state testing, and there's this whole entire slew of documentation and paperwork that the state needs to approve any accommodations for state testing for public schools. And one of my earliest memories is I was taking one of these state tests. The accommodations that were offered to me were just, simply larger text and different contrast settings. And, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely really grateful for those. I was sitting there literally with my nose like touching the screen because still this font was small. I remember being so frustrated in that moment.
We're not just checking a box. We're rolling up our sleeves and testing it and learning new things every day that we wouldn't have learned just by going on the WCAG site. So we use WCAG as sort of the gold standard. But there's nothing to say that you have to limit yourself to what's on that site. Over 1 in 4 people either have a disability or are struggling with certain things. So you're really talking about a lot of people who give up mid-session.
Totally. Yeah, I love what you're saying here, Rob. I think this really ties into like WCAG and how WCAG is framed. It's not a target. It is the minimum. They are guidelines to meet the minimum. Go above, go beyond, look for opportunities to be better, look for opportunities to surprise your members, really get them included. It's a minimum. This brings me to a point, like I love that Gunnar's working with you to help figure things out. I do remember my experience working at the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corp, years ago. At the BBC, they were doing accessibility before WCAG was even a thing, to be honest. All designers there had to provide designs with accessibility annotations. They had to talk with engineers and explain to them how they should be building things. So at the BBC, we had to do something like that because it is a publicly funded company in the UK. So every digital product, website, any and everything had to be accessible to everyone because everyone was paying for it as a requirement by law. So it was high value at the BBC to make sure that experiences were accessible and equitable for everyone. We were also thinking about that in our hiring experience. We had a lot of blind engineers that were hired to make sure that they could talk about their lived experience. And that was a wonderful experience. They were writing beautiful, accessible code, thinking about everyone as they were developing these websites. So having people hired with disabilities inside of your company really goes a long way. And like Rob was just mentioning, 1 in 4 Americans has a disability, and you're building products for everyone, and they can help you do that. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I love what you're saying, Rob. I'll give it back over to you.
Amazing. Okay, so I just get very inspired when I hear Gunnar talking. Botcopy has not just recently thought, hey, ADA compliance might be a good thing to look into. Before we even wrote our first line of code, we were thinking that website accessibility is going to become a pretty important thing. We take it very seriously. It's easier than ever to build really powerful AI agents, putting them on websites, not just FAQs, but actual services. And the best way to make that come to life is through identification. If the bot doesn't know who you are and you're not secure, then you can't conduct mission critical tasks like applying for unemployment, working with the DMV or healthcare. That's why ID.me is sort of the lock and the peephole, so to speak, on the front door that is Botcopy, where there's no wrong door, also an accessible door, and now it's an authenticated door. So it's really all converging. Behind the scenes is Google, and Google Cloud is just exploding in terms of this back-end AI framework. We're that layer that takes that agent when it's done and we deploy it to the website. It's not a demo, it's not a proof of concept. You can't just do a one-click and have it deploy onto a government website. There are many steps. We've matured into this stack that makes that happen. So instead of a huge front-end tech burden that could cost millions and have all kinds of janky code and different code bases, we're a SaaS that brings that agent, embeds it onto the website cleanly on every device, every language. And so that's what we are. And then programming the agent and making sure that it's ingesting the proper information. That's a service provider. TTAC is a great example. What's great about TTAC, we collaborated with them to build pre-built agent skills or task engines on our marketplace, and they're also on Google Marketplace. So if you're with a government agency and you want to launch some kind of service, but it needs to be ADA compliant and it needs to work and it needs to be extremely secure and vetted by experts, you don't have to build that flow 6 months, 7 months, tinkering around with it to make sure it works. It's actually already built.
So thinking about how agentic CX experiences are today, this opens a whole new world of opportunities, human interactions online, thinking about today's experiences. When a company is doing like accessibility testing, manual audits, they're looking at things screen by screen, page by page. Testing is going to be done on a static experience, a static page. You don't know what a page looks like, but with agentic CX, things are dynamic, human-based scenarios that agentic CX is helping you go through. So it's really important to make sure that looking at something like this, each different unique experience is accessible for everyone. I would like to tell a little bit of a story actually about how we had some testing done at ID.me and some learnings that we got from that. So we work with an external accessibility partner by the name of Level Access. We've been working with them for a few years now. They do our audits on all of our different journeys and digital products throughout the company to make sure that we are continuing to do the work to stay compliant and meeting with WCAG 2.2 requirements. We got a really high score for our identity product on one of the audits that they provided for us. But that was doing, testing screen by screen on static experience. But when you think about our experience, our product, it's actually a journey. It's not screen by screen. So if a member gets stuck on one page, for example, like the password entry field or something, they can't complete that, then what can they do? So we actually called them out on that high score and said that we need to organize some actual testing, usability testing with blind and low vision users. And lo and behold, they actually got stuck on some of the pages and couldn't move past that experience. So that was a lesson learned for us and for them, that we always need to bring humans in with a lived experience to actually verify that they can actually go through the experience and not just look at static pages screen by screen. So yeah, it's important. That ties in here. Everyone actually has to be able to use it. So you need to be able to see them use it. Can you see them use it?
So the password reset use case makes up a huge amount of volume. And so we worked really hard to get literally like 30 seconds of beautiful user journey right. One of the many ways we've gotten close with IDMe over the years is making sure that we can do these things. Once the password reset is done and they're verified, it stays with you. So now the password is reset, but the agent is still there. And the agent is saying, oh, now that I'm in, I can see all the things that you need to take care of with the state. It's a treasure trove of different things you can do if you're logged in. Keith Newton, you asked a great question. How is Agentic CX doing things that I couldn't already do without LLM? We built without LLMs for years using Dialogflow CX. And the truth is, there's a lot you can do, especially for narrow use case public sector. It took me a while to say, hey, we're going to need Gen AI for this. I thought, hey, we can do this all deterministically. But the truth is, we're up on multiple sites, multiple departments. And the LLM is so fluid. When a user types in a query, it scrapes the entire database within the website so that when it answers in natural language, it can also show you a citation of where it's getting that information. The reason we do that, if there's something lost in translation, whether it's 1%, 2%, what is 1%, 2% when you're talking about millions of citizens? So if you're using an LLM, you want to make sure that it's right. When you use an LLM in this way, all of the data that's been ingested by the model is right there and it's citationable. So you get your answer. It's not going to go into a default fallback, hit some kind of awkward wall. There's going to be a lot of fluid understanding, but the informational part is being captured from one of the deep pages that the user doesn't want to go hunt around for. After that answer comes in natural language, the user has the option to click on where that was taken from within the website. So a very worked out service flow for filing a claim, whether it's with healthcare or seeing if you can check the status on your unemployment claim or whatever it may be. Those are strict service flows that we've spent years figuring out. You go from A to B to C, you do the handoff here, you do the authentication here, you do the file upload here. In between those steps, you're also asking questions. Before we had to log in, Botcopy sends a JWT, JSON Web Tokens. It's highly encrypted, and once you get past that, you are opening up a world of possibilities. The actual bottlenecks where people get stuck in the system for weeks or months, and your staff, they're not getting enough sleep, and they've got a huge backlog of things they have to do. It was because we couldn't automate those things. Making sure we can is just changing a lot, especially with those pre-builts. Speaking of those pre-builts, this is what we're talking about, 6-month, 9-month journey and all the guesswork down to a few weeks. It's been done for you. You click into one, you'll find information. Once you add pre-builts that you think you might need, and it gets sent to our team, it saves a lot of time. We've got these models now. They have to get to the end user somehow, and they have to pass through these structured tools that make sense of them and make them safe. At Botcopy, accessibility is just one pillar: identification, handoff, multilingual on either side, and being compatible with any legacy provider. Behavioral triggers, the chat window is actually proactive, especially if it's somebody who's having that accessibility issue. The chat window will see that. We have a product called TrueQ, which will track all of that conversationally. So on Gemini Enterprise, it's available as an agent or within the Botcopy portal. You can simply say, have there been any accessibility UX issues, and what should we fix next?
Yeah, so there's a question about why is accessibility different for Agentic CX than it is for a static website. I can take that one. Accessibility is the foundation for both. It's going to be the same in most cases, thinking about buttons and colors, making sure there's enough contrast for low vision members, making sure that the language is easy to read for all users. Those are pieces of like the foundation, and it's going to be the same for both. What is different for like static pages versus like Agentic CX is static pages, you're going to know exactly what the focus order is going to need to be for screen reader. You're going to know exactly how to tell the backend to start at the top, move to here, move to the body, move to this header, etc. Agentic CX, this is like a brand new conversation that happens every time you're using it. Much more dynamic. The journey is going to be different. The outcome is going to be different each time. Different fail states, different success states. The flow is going to be entirely dynamic each and every time. Accessibility there needs to be related to how things are handled for each and every potential scenario. Outcomes can be achieved and is going to be equitable for each and every person. I hope that answers your question, but it is different.
How can accessibility become a competitive advantage instead of just a compliance requirement? Certainly if you're an agency and you have very high levels of accessibility, that's going to, of course, reflect well on your team. It's going to please your citizens and it's going to get things done and make your budgets go farther and all that. But if you're on the other side where you're looking to serve more customers, how can I attract more customers? How can I win more RFPs? If you have a story to tell and pushing, leading, because like Nick said, there's no limit to how accessible we can be. This is kind of a great opportunity for creativity because it's not defined. It's not defined like it is for physical buildings. And so we get to contribute to that. And if we don't, what does that say about our company? So if we're actually out there pushing the boundaries, I do think that changes the incentive structure for the nation. And so if we start to look for vendors that are pushing and actually having dedicated staff members, I think that can really create a huge competitive advantage. Not just that, but actually make things better for millions of people who right now are left behind. Of all the times to be left behind when AI is set to really transform life as we know it, that must be hard to feel like you're left behind. So all kinds of reasons to do it, but certainly gives that government agency an incentive to reward companies that are, investing in that.
Totally. I would say also, I think it's a trust signal. Knowing that a company is actively working to serve all users, I think that gives end users confidence in that company, that this company is working to serve me and will continue to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dustin.
Hey everyone, I just want to chime in here on just a little high-level picture about Botcopy, why as a company this is a huge mission of ours to make sure no one's left behind. And even being able to host these kind of workshops just to raise awareness around, there's not really an excuse anymore. I think we've all seen, even the last 50 years of technology enhancements. I was in New York a month ago and just was in their Department of Labor, and in the Department of Labor, I think in July was the accessibility month. The timeline and how much progress we've made as a country supporting everyone from even 50 years ago, where people in wheelchairs couldn't get into city halls because there were stairs. And there's a picture in New York with a handful of people that got out of their wheelchairs and sat and protested on those stairs. And I just think that it's just such a powerful statement. We're in the biggest wave of enhancements technology I think has ever seen. But we should be able to learn from everything that we've seen in the past, where it's not an excuse anymore to really take the design principles to make sure that everything that we're doing and everything that we're moving to remains compliant. We're pretty close in the field on contact center activity. That's where we shine. One of the larger investments, both state, locally, and federally, is to modernize your contact center. We're using this terminology, no wrong door, because if you look at any tabloids or RFPs out there, that's usually the terminology that's being used. However, one thing that we're really strong and proud to stand behind is to make sure that that door, aka Botcopy, is accessible. We're very attentive to things like the input bar in the chat window and making sure that knowing that you're still in the input bar if you're visually impaired is possible. So as these investments and as technology moves to being able to do end-to-end tasks, Rob was sharing a screen a little bit ago on our marketplace. We've got over 40 pre-built, what we call agentic workflows. Technology is giving us the ability not to have everything go to human, not to have to walk into City Hall to file for a permit that's taking place outside of a website. The website's great. I don't think websites are going anywhere, but more and more, especially a younger generation, they have a desire to use these new tools to make sure that they're saving time, get things that they want accomplished, don't have to wait for hours on hold. And here we are bringing that to the market in every single agency, but making sure that everybody can access that. And that's been our mission. That's why we're so close with ID.me as well, because they've really taken an initiative of their own to make sure ADA compliance is met. So the ability, when you go into this new modern contact center front door, to actually authenticate, to know that you are communicating with Dustin, that Dustin has these vehicles or this unemployment record. It's about time that as we move into bigger and better technology, that we just don't forget that everybody should be able to use it. And it doesn't mean that we need to sacrifice or spend a lot more money designing these things for both parties. I think in our purview, it should all be just easy and good to use. And it shouldn't matter whether you have disabilities or not. And that's what we take to heart. That's why we're here today. When we look at a PDF, whether it's a digital copy or a paper copy, there are a lot of other solutions to convert that document into a compliant format. But and Gunnar's not able to be here today to speak to this, but I've had several conversations with him. But if you're visually impaired, and let's say that PDF is 50 pages long. Now that conversion of that PDF, it still meets compliance, which means that a screen reader is going to take place. But if visually impaired citizens are forced to listen to a screen reader for a 50-page document in order to answer one or two questions, I would argue that that is not a great experience.
Right. And a lot of people don't know that when you're taking PDFs and turning them into accessible web views, and you're taking something that's more implicit and not so easily scrapable or machine understandable, and you're turning it into something that is explicit. And then that just means more AI for everybody. We're working with our friends over at Anacomp to solve that problem.
So for the same cost, not only can we make that document compliant, but we can have a compliant AI assistant help answer questions along the way. And that's our whole goal there. As well as instead of housing and on these conversions, I think one of the easier ways to do it is convert the document into an HTML format that meets ADA compliance, screen reader compatible. But in an HTML compliant document, if you have millions of them, which some of our customers do, that means you'd have to host millions of web pages. So in this experience, we're taking care of all the hosting costs. You don't have to manage millions of pages. It resides, if Rob, go ahead and click on one of those PDF links. It resides in Botcopy's chat window. So as you can see, Botcopy's chat window has opened up and expanded into a full screen view. We're housing the HTML document. It is screen reader compatible. In this particular example, it's quite short, so it might not be a horrible experience. Just listen to the screen reader on that. But you can ask it questions. So see up the top right, ask question. So now it knows the document. So if you said, what is this document? It's going to be able to respond and answer questions directly to that document. So it's just another advantage right there that not only can we meet the need and the compliance requirements for those documents that are publicly accessible. FOIA is probably one of the bigger use cases that we have. Millions of documents within both federal and state FOIA departments have to meet compliance by May of next year. Those documents need to be scrubbed. PII, all sorts of things are taken out of that. But they need to be accessible. So in this particular example, we're making them accessible. We have scrubbed them, and we've tied an AI agent within Botcopy's window to answer direct questions from that. Rob, I'll hand closing remarks back over to you.
It's been a pleasure. This is one of our favorite topics. The clock is ticking. It was supposed to be April of 2026, and we were at Google Next when it was announced that it was pushed back a year. It was mixed feelings. You're deprioritizing disabled people, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to lead and get way ahead of the game, which is where we should be anyway. And the person who said that at our company was Gunnar. So he had every reason to be frustrated, and he was already thinking, "Hey, it's good news because we all have another chance to get ahead of things." And so that's where we're at. We're available. We'd love to talk more. Thanks again, everybody. And thank you, Nick Beese, and to IDMe.
And I want to thank all our participants as well as our speakers for being with us today. We hope our webinar has been helpful for you and your organization. If you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to contact Kyle Detling at Carahsoft. His contact information is displayed on your screen, so please don't hesitate to call or email him. Thank you and have a great day.